Hi. My name is Emma. Nice to meet you. Before I tell you my story, AJ Family Drama found my story interesting and wants me to share. So please kindly tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I like to know where you are from. Now let's dive in. There's something sacred about anniversaries. The promise that no matter how bruised the days in between may be, tonight at least you try. You celebrate what's left. You remember why you began. I laid out the linen napkins, straightened the candles, and adjusted the single rose he used to buy every year but hadn't for the last 3. This year I bought it myself. He was late. I checked the oven, turned the asparagus once more, and looked at my phone. No missed calls. No texts. Just silence. We'd grown used to that lately. His distance, the hushed calls from the other room, the work stress he never explained. Finally, at 8:14, I heard his keys in the door. "Hey," he said, walking in with that half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. "Smells amazing." I kissed his cheek, lingering longer than he did. "Happy anniversary." "You too," he said, pulling out a bottle from behind his back. "Figured we could toast like old times." It was the bottle from our honeymoon, the exact vineyard. My heart did a strange little leap. For a moment I let myself believe we might be okay. "I'll pour," he offered, heading to the kitchen. I froze. That wasn't like him. He rarely poured wine, claimed he always spilled too much. But I nodded anyway and busied myself plating the food. He returned a minute later with 2 glasses. I reached for mine, but something made me pause. "Which one's mine?" I asked, smiling. He handed me the one in his left hand. "Does it matter?" "No," I said, though my stomach twisted. We sat, clinked glasses, and he took a long sip. I raised mine to my lips, but then I hesitated. A strange, almost bitter smell wafted from the glass. Not corked exactly. Just off. I murmured. "Smells funny." "Really?" he said, glancing at me too quickly. "Mine's fine." I set it down. "Maybe my nose is playing tricks." He smiled, but I saw it. The flicker of something beneath his skin. Not worry. Not amusement. Relief. Before I could make sense of it, the doorbell rang. We both turned. "I thought it was just us tonight?" I asked. He stiffened. "It is. I didn't invite anyone." But when I opened the door I saw her. Francesca. His sister. Dead Francesca. At least that's what I'd believed. The last I heard, she died in a car crash 2 months ago. He never let me see the body. Said it was too gruesome. Said she wanted to be cremated. But there she was, very much alive, her sharp red lipstick and smug smile firmly in place. "Surprise," she purred. "You weren't the only one he invited." I stared at her, blood draining from my face. "You're supposed to be dead?" she laughed, stepping in. "Don't be dramatic." My husband didn't look shocked. Annoyed. Like someone whose plan was unraveling in front of him. "You told me she was." "Later," he snapped. "Let's just eat." She spotted the wine on the table and helped herself to the full glass I had refused. "You always had good taste," she said, raising it in my direction before downing it in one swallow. I watched in silent horror as she smiled, blinked, and then her hand began to tremble. She dropped the glass. Tattered. She clutched her throat, gasping, eyes wide, convulsing. I screamed. My husband just stood there. "Call 911. I shouted. He didn't move. I grabbed my phone, fingers shaking, and knelt beside her. Her body twitched once, then went still, the wine staining her lips like blood. By the time the paramedics arrived, she was gone. And I already knew, that glass was meant for me. The paramedics worked in silence, save for the cold clatter of metal tools and the occasional murmured instruction. I stood numbly in the corner of my own living room, my arms wrapped tightly around myself, watching them zip Francesca's body into a black bag. It wasn't supposed to be this way. "She just showed up," I told the female officer, gently questioning me. "I didn't know she was alive." "And she poured her own wine?" "No," I said, voice trembling. "My husband poured both glasses in the kitchen. Brought them out." Her pen paused. "Did you see him pour them?" I shook my head. "No." She exchanged a brief look with the other officer. I knew that look. It wasn't pity. It was calculation. Behind her, my husband sat slouched on the couch, face in his hands. His shoulders trembled, but I hadn't heard a single sob. Not when she collapsed. Not when they pronounced her dead. I kept rewinding the night in my head. That moment when I hesitated, when I lifted the glass to my lips and paused. If I'd taken even one sip. I stepped closer to the officer. My voice dropped. I think I was supposed to drink that wine. Her gaze snapped to mine. What makes you say that? She didn't drink often. Francesca. I don't think she even liked red wine. It was already poured. The glass was meant for me. She gave a slight nod and jotted something down. We'll take both glasses for toxicology. The bottle too. I glanced over at the table. Both glasses, his and the one Francesca used, lay shattered on the floor, wine soaking into the rug beneath her last breath. My husband still hadn't looked at me. An hour later, after the body had been taken and the house cleared, Detective Lena Cross introduced herself. Mid-30s, steel-eyed and deceptively soft-spoken. She wore a long black coat over her slacks, her badge flashing only once before she tucked it away like a weapon not needed yet. I know this is a difficult night, she said, taking a seat across from me. But I'd like to ask you a few questions now while it's fresh. I nodded, hands wrapped around a mug of untouched tea. Your husband's sister, Francesca. Can you tell me more about her? She was controlling, I said before I could filter myself. Sharp-tongued. She liked being in charge. She could also be possessive. Possessive how? She didn't like that he married me. Always said I was beneath him. And when we had our daughter, she tried to name her herself. Lena raised a brow. And your relationship with her? I looked down. Complicated. Tense. She leaned in. Did you know she was alive? No. He told me she died. 2 months ago. Said it was a car crash, closed casket, cremation. I wasn't even allowed at the service. And tonight. She just showed up. I was shocked. He didn't even look surprised. Just irritated. Lena scribbled more notes. Who poured the wine? He did. He went into the kitchen, poured both glasses and brought them out. I didn't see him do it. She nodded. Did he hand you your glass? Yes. Did you drink? I brought it to my lips. But something about the smell. It didn't feel right. So I said something. And I didn't drink. But Francesca did. She took mine. I hadn't touched it. Lena sat back, her eyes narrowing just slightly. I'm going to ask you something hard, she said. Do you think your husband intended to poison you? The words dropped like ice in my lap. I stared at her. My mouth opened. Nothing came. I thought of how he watched me that night. How he flinched when I questioned the wine. How he didn't call 911 when Francesca collapsed. How he lied about her death. Yes, I whispered. I do. She held my gaze for a long beat. Thank you for your honesty, she said quietly. We'll be in touch once the toxicology comes back. In the meantime, I suggest you stay somewhere else tonight. That's when I realized I didn't feel safe. Not in my home. Not with him. And worst of all, not in my marriage. Morning came, but I hadn't slept. I spent most of the night sitting upright in the guest bedroom of my friend Callie's house, listening to the rhythmic hum of her toddler's baby monitor down the hall and wondering how my life had shattered in a single evening. I kept replaying the moment Francesca hit the floor. Her red lipstick smeared across her cheek. Her eyes bulging. My husband standing there, frozen like he was waiting for something that never came. Relief maybe. Closure. My phone buzzed just after 7 a.m. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, a text followed. Toxicology confirmed cyanide. Call me when you're alone. Detective Cross. Cyanide. I held my breath so long my lungs burned. Callie made coffee and hovered near me like I was breakable porcelain. You sure you don't want to eat something? Toast maybe. I shook my head. Thanks. I'm not hungry. She didn't press. Just sat across from me, silent and worried. Did you know he told me Francesca was dead? I asked, finally speaking. Held me in his arms while I cried for her. I lit a candle for her at church. Callie nodded slowly. Maybe she faked it. People do wild things for money or revenge. Or maybe he faked it, I whispered. To clear the path. I didn't say what I meant aloud. To clear the path for my murder. After Callie dropped her son off at daycare, I stepped outside to call Detective Cross. She picked up on the first ring. Is your husband with you? She asked. No. I stayed with a friend. Good. Keep doing that. He hasn't contacted you. Not yet. She sighed. He disappeared for several hours after the paramedics left. Didn't show up at the hospital. We found him early this morning parked outside a closed pharmacy. No explanation. What does that mean? It means he's spooked. Francesca's death was ruled suspicious. Pending investigation. Suspicious. I laughed hollowly. He poured the damn wine. We'll need proof of intent. We're working on a warrant for your home. We want to search for anything. Substances, receipts, financial motive. Financial motive. Of course. The house. The savings. The life insurance policy I never read. And our daughter. If I died, everything would go to her. But she's a minor. Which meant him. He'd have control over it all. Over her life, over her money. The thought made me sick. Was she the target? I asked. Francesca. Detective Cross hesitated. No. We believe you were. The weight of that settled over me like a second skin. Do you know about any insurance policies? She asked next. Not exactly, I murmured. He had me sign some estate documents last year. He said it was in case something happened while he was traveling. I didn't ask questions. I'd suggest you start asking now. After the call ended, I sat in my car outside a cafe I couldn't bring myself to enter and stared blankly out the windshield. And that's when I saw him. Across the street. My husband. Leaning against a black car I didn't recognize, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses, arms crossed like he was waiting for someone, or watching someone. He hadn't seen me. I ducked, heart pounding, watching through the side mirror. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. Middle-aged, in a long brown coat, face obscured. They didn't shake hands. They didn't smile. But they exchanged a thick envelope. No words. Just the kind of motion you see in mob documentaries. Then my husband climbed into the car with the man. And they drove off. I sat there frozen for a full minute. Not crying. Not panicking. Just watching the last threads of who I thought he was unravel one by one. He was meeting people in secret. He was making transactions. Francesca had reappeared and died within hours. And I, his wife of 14 years, was the one who nearly drank the poisoned wine. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. I unlocked the front door with hands that no longer felt like mine. Every creak of the hinges sounded louder now, every shadow suspicious. The house still carried traces of the night before. The faint metallic tang of spilled wine, the smear of red on the floor where Francesca collapsed, the wine glass shards still trapped in the rug fibers. The police had taken most of the obvious things. Both wine glasses, the bottle, the silverware, the security footage from the neighborhood's front gate. But this was my house. They hadn't seen everything. They hadn't seen what I'd seen. I walked past the table, my eyes catching the edge of a photo frame slightly out of place on the mantel. Our wedding picture. The one where he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. The frame was crooked. But I adjusted it, only to realize the frame was heavier than I remembered. I turned it over. Taped to the back was a folded envelope. Tightly sealed. My name wasn't on it. No name at all. Just a single letter stamped on the back flap. G. I didn't recognize it. I slipped the envelope into my purse and moved quickly upstairs. I hadn't packed a bag when I left last night. Callie shoved a few things in a tote for me, but I needed real clothes, my laptop, medication, anything that reminded me that I had a life beyond this madness. I also needed to see the study. His study. He kept it locked most of the time, claiming he didn't want our daughter stumbling in and spilling juice on his contracts. He'd never been territorial before. Now it felt like a fortress. But I knew something he didn't. The key he kept hidden in the linen closet behind the backup towels. I found it right where it always was and slid it into the lock. The door creaked open. The air smelled sterile like printer toner and leather and secrets. Neat stacks of paper sat on the desk, a pair of reading glasses perched on a closed journal. I stepped carefully around, glancing at each shelf, each drawer. Nothing jumped out at first, just files, business invoices, tax statements. And then, behind a row of binders, I noticed the wooden grain was different. Slightly recessed. Panel. I pressed it gently. It popped open with a soft click. Behind it was a small fireproof box. Locked. I stared at it, adrenaline buzzing in my chest. I checked every drawer until I found a loose paper clip, bent it awkwardly and began to fumble with the lock. Took me 4 tries, 1 deep breath and a twist of luck. The box clicked open. Inside, 2 manila folders, a flash drive, and a document labeled POA, Power of Attorney. I skimmed the first page. My name. My signature. But I didn't remember signing it. It gave him full control over my assets, should I become incapacitated or die. My throat tightened. I flipped to the next document. A life insurance policy in my name. $500,000. Listed beneficiary, our daughter. But in smaller print, below that, guardian of minor beneficiary, his name. So if I died, the money passed to him through her. I opened the second folder. Credit card statements. Not ours. Not even in our names. But the addresses linked to a P.O. box I recognized from the pharmacy where he'd been found yesterday. Multiple purchases. Large ones. Chemicals. Disguised under different vendor names, but clear enough if you were looking. Lab-grade compounds, solvents, a small vial of potassium cyanide ordered under a business ID I'd never seen before. He hadn't just thought about killing me. He planned it. I grabbed the flash drive, shoved everything back into my tote and locked the study behind me. As I turned to leave, I stopped. There, in the hallway mirror, I saw my own reflection, but I didn't recognize myself. Tired. Stripped of illusion. But beneath all of that, something else was forming. Still. Resolve. He thought he could erase me. Make it all look like grief and bad luck and clean signatures. He thought I'd drink, smile, sleep, and never wake up. He had no idea who he was married to. I pulled out my phone, heart pounding. Me, I found something. I'm coming in. Seconds later, Detective Cross replied. Cross, bring everything. I'll meet you in the back entrance. And watch your six. If he knows you know, he may not wait to try again. The police station wasn't anything like I expected. No yelling, no chaos. Just silence, beige walls, and the steady hum of cheap fluorescent lights that made everything feel washed out, like the world had already faded before the truth could fully come to light. Detective Cross met me at the rear entrance just like she promised. Did anyone follow you? She asked, her tone sharp. I shook my head. I don't think so. I took 2 different turns off the highway, circled a gas station. I'm not sure he even knows I've left Callie's. Let's not count on it, she muttered, motioning for me to follow. She led me through a side hallway, past an interrogation room with the lights off, and into a small conference room that felt colder than the rest of the building. Inside, she introduced me to a second officer, a quiet, serious tech analyst named Mason, before locking the door behind us. I handed over the flash drive and the documents. Cross laid them out carefully, snapping on gloves as she flipped through. When she reached the life insurance policy, her expression turned granite. This signature here, she said, tapping the form. Did you sign this knowingly? I don't remember signing that, I replied. But I remember the day. He said it was about authorizing a business trip. I was in the middle of preparing for our daughter's school fundraiser. I didn't read it. She nodded grimly. You'd be surprised how many victims say that. The people closest to us, especially the ones we love, know exactly when our guard is down. Mason plugged in the flash drive and brought it to life on the monitor. At first it looked like random documents, scanned receipts, spreadsheets, PDFs. But as he opened them, the pattern emerged. Offshore transfers, silent accounts, cryptic messages between burner email addresses, lab supply vendors, shipment schedules, and photos. At least 24 images of chemical packaging, instructions for dissolving capsules into liquids, and my stomach dropped. A photo of our dining room table from a month ago. Same candle placement. Same plates. A dry run. He had been rehearsing. My goodness, Cross muttered, scrolling faster. This is premeditated. Not just for your death. This is insurance fraud, attempted murder, and if we're right about how Francesca got involved, maybe more. She opened a folder labeled simply, FC Records. Inside were files. Dozens of them. Financial statements, debt records, transcripts of emails, all tied to Francesca. He was paying off her debts, Cross said. Looks like she was blackmailing him, threatening to go to the police. For what? Cross clicked through the files, her brow furrowed. It was Mason who found it, tucked into a document labeled, draft. If anything happens. A letter. If you're reading this, it means I'm either dead or worse. Francesca's been pressing for more money. She threatened to tell my wife everything. I couldn't let that happen. I've worked too hard for too long. If this ends the way I think it will, I just hope my daughter is taken care of. I never wanted her involved. But I've run out of options. Francesca always said we were in this together, but she would have buried me to save herself. I felt the world shift beneath me. He had planned it. Not just the murder, but the cover-up, the money, the why. And Francesca wasn't just a surprise guest. She was a liability. Someone he'd once trusted but now saw as a threat. He hadn't invited her to dinner. He crashed it. He took the glass that was meant for me. And she paid the price. He was trying to silence her, I said, my voice tight. And me. Cross nodded. This isn't a man caught in a mistake. This is someone who wanted a way out and was willing to kill for it. But why now? I asked. Why not years ago? Cross leaned back in her chair. That's what we need to figure out. Either something forced his hand, or something changed. I thought of the strange man I saw him meet near the cafe. The envelope. The cold way they stood, transactional, silent. I told Cross everything. Her eyes narrowed. You're sure you'd never seen him before? Not once. But he looked like someone who never wanted to be remembered anyway. Mob enforcer, she said flatly. Or debt collector. Either way, we need to get surveillance from that area. She picked up the phone. Start building a case file on him. I want a name. Then she turned to me. Her voice softened. You need to go somewhere safe. Not Callie's. Somewhere he'd never think to look. And stay away from your daughter until we clear this. He's desperate. If he thinks you've turned him in. I've already turned him in, I said, standing. And if he comes near me again, I won't hesitate. She looked at me for a moment, measuring my resolve. Then she nodded. Good.